Hey everybody, welcome to today's session with the Sydney HashiCorp user group. Today I'm joined with one of my friends, Kunal Verma. Kunal, would you like to please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining in. My name is Kunal Verma. I am currently pursuing my bachelor's in IT from India. I am in second year. Yeah, I'm a DevOps enthusiast, and I've been contributing to open source since my last year, since my freshman year. It's really exciting to be a part of a lot of communities and interact with amazing people like we have Brad here. So yeah, thank you so much for joining, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and today's session will be on, so we're doing a series of getting certified in Terraform. So we'll have around 7 sessions, and this one is really to understand, why get certified in Terraform, how it can help you in your career, and understanding, infrastructure as code and how that can, get you really started in the cloud space as well, and then moving on to, some more open source and other technologies as well. Not that, Terraform's open source as well, but what I mean is like more Kubernetes and, cloud native stuff. So, um, yeah, do you want to maybe share your screen and we can talk over the exam first?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So, yeah, part of a lot of people have been asking me recently, where should they start in cloud and DevOps space as well? And I recommend this certification a lot because what it will do is if you can learn infrastructure as code, then you can, at the same time, you can learn, both AWS, GCP, Azure, Alibaba, etc., because they all use Terraform as well. So it's really good because as a hiring manager myself, if I know that someone knows Terraform, I know that they can use that to provision infrastructure pretty much in any cloud because it's the same language. So they have the concept of resources and modules. So if you if you can reference them on the internet, then it's very easy to do that, in every cloud. So here we can see here that we have the Terraform Associate, it's called. So generally, it's good to have a little bit of production experience, but there's a lot of great training and labs out there. So yeah, if anyone has questions as they go, then please, ask away because these sessions are really based, on beginners, and we want you to be asking as many questions as you can so that we can help you prepare for this.
Yeah,
Um,
just wanted to add a point in here. So sometimes, folks ask me like, okay, Kunal, I have this particular technology that I want to learn, and actually I've learned it to a particular level. So is there any way that I can test that out? So certifications are a really nice opportunity for you to test a particular technology if to see if you have the knowledge of, that particular technology that you have learned. So it basically acts as a proof of concept, and you can definitely add this certification in your resume because this will really affect your resume and when it will go into a job or anything else that you want to be a part of. So yeah.
yeah, and DevOps can be really hard to get into because it's quite a senior role, and your first job to get your first job is the most important. So if you do have a certification like this, it's highly regarded to get your foot in the door. And especially, I know a lot of people that would do be able to get internships if they got this because the manager at least knows that okay, they know quite this exam is quite good actually. So if they know this, then they will have enough skills to start the internship. You do that for a few months, and then you land your job. And as you know, like DevOps is a really hot place at the moment, and you can go really, really far. Like you just have to land your first job, and this will really help you for that. So it's one of the better exams out there. Some of them, um, some cloud ones aren't that good, but this one it's multi-choice, so it's not hands-on or anything. You just have to answer the multi-choice questions and sometimes fill in the blanks. So yeah, you can see today. Like today, we'll go over we're in the exam objectives. you'll see that we have around 7 categories. So today we'll be going over the understand infrastructure as code concepts. So we'll explain what infrastructure as code is, describing the advantages of IaC patterns as well. And then in the series, each Saturday, we're going to be doing the other one. So understand Terraform's purpose, which we'll actually probably do that today as well. Understand Terraform basics that we're going to be doing next time, the CLI. So the CLI one will be a cool one because it will be quite a practical one. Interact with Terraform modules, that's going to be another really good one. Navigating Terraform workflow, and implementing and maintaining state, which is very unique to Terraform as well, which is one thing I really like about it. So, and read, generate, and modify configuration. And the last one, understanding. So there's 3 ways that you can use Terraform. You can use it sort of open source on your own setup. You can use Terraform Cloud, or you can use the enterprise as well. So Terraform Cloud and enterprise are quite similar. One's like on-premise and one's like a SaaS model. So yeah, so the exam, if we go up to the top again, so yeah, it's around 90 minutes. I think there's around 70 questions as well. Yeah, here we can see here. Yep. Oh yeah, so 1 hour, 60 minutes. It's worth $70 US. So through this training, thanks to HashiCorp, we have some free vouchers as well. So for those that are like serious about doing this and we can see that you're putting in the work, we can, there's a possibility that we can give you a voucher. So look out for those. And, if you are serious about doing it, HashiCorp is really generous and they're here to help. We have some swag coming as well, which is going to be pretty cool to give out. That should be in, probably in about 3 weeks. It takes a while to ship things at the moment. So yeah, Kunal, do you have any questions on this exam?
Yeah, one point I'll also mention here, basically. So, another benefit of, following a certification is that a particular certification going for like a particular technology, if you talk about, it actually provides you a path to follow, right? So as you can see, the topics Brad just mentioned here. So you'll go from the basics of understanding about what is infrastructure as code, and infrastructure as code is a really important topic if we talk about in the DevOps ecosystem, if you want to get started with it. So it actually definitely gives you a path to follow. So if you are confused about like where to start, because there are so many technologies to learn, certifications are a really nice way to go about it. I am also preparing for a certification which is called as AWS Cloud Practitioner. So I can totally relate to someone like who just got started, because I also got started in the cloud space and was a little bit confused like which technology to learn, how to learn it. But that certification is actually giving me like a definite path to follow. So taking it from the basics, and then I can learn different technologies along the way. So yeah, it definitely helps you all to actually gain experience. Plus don't get, you will not get confused like where to learn and how to learn, basically. Because if you are interested in preparing for this particular certification as well, there are a lot of free resources that are available on the internet, and HashiCorp also provides you a lot of free resources as well, which we'll be looking a little bit later. So yeah, but Brad, do you want to add anything here?
Yeah, and I think $70 US for some people is a lot of money. So I think it is a lot of money, but if you really back yourself and go for this, you'll find that it is, it's the salary that you'll make as you go in your DevOps career will be like very good. It's a very hot market, so I think it is a great investment. There's a lot of people, but instead of maybe you're going to buy your NFT or your Bitcoin or something, you should probably invest in your certification career, and you'll probably see that you actually make more money doing that instead. Just really focusing on your income, getting more income, and yeah, I think it is a lot, but it's a great investment into your career if you back yourself. And there's a lot of free practice tests as well. So it's important to know as well that you can reschedule your exam up to 24 hours before it. So if you think that you're not ready, then it doesn't matter, because you can just say, okay, I'm going to postpone this for another month. And then, So there's some, and what I used when I studied, when I got my certification is I used the HashiCorp Learn. Like, that's a really good place to look, and to start, and it's totally free as well. So there's some great documentation here, and also we have a little Slack community as well. So if folks want to come there and ask questions, well, we can ask. You can ask as many questions as you want, and there's a lot of people there how to help. So so if we want to go into some of these modules now, so infrastructure as code. So that infrastructure as code, that's by one of the founders of HashiCorp, and that really explains a lot of why we should use it. So if you look at traditional, and this is not too long ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of people were provisioning infrastructure manually, and sometimes that can take weeks to do a production environment. So the reason that we brought infrastructure code as code in is that it creates immutable infrastructure. So you define your whole infrastructure. So when we say the word infrastructure, we're meaning any sort of cloud service. If we take Amazon or AWS, it's probably the most common as an example. It can be from IAM roles, EC2 instances, databases, pretty much anything that any cloud service that we provide. So we can define that in code, and then we can automatically provision things in any environment we have, like dev, staging, test, UAT, prod. So it has extreme benefits. And then if we look at the introduction to IaC documentation there, it's the third hyperlink down. Just up, sorry. So just go up a little bit more, and then the third one down. So two more down. Yeah, one more down. That's the one. And you can see here that there's great documentation on it as well. Yeah, that's the one. So this goes over a lot of what we said as well. So that's the video I was talking about as well. So yeah, that's pretty much an introduction. I think if you want, I can share my screen as well, and then we can go over a little bit of some code as well. I think would be good.
Yeah, sure. Just one point to mention here. I am actually also a beginner in this particular technology. I actually started to learn 2 to 3 days back only. But this video presented by the co-founder and CTO of HashiCorp, R1, is really helpful for someone who just want to learn about Terraform, like get an overview of what Terraform basically is and how it actually manages, like how it is actually helpful in infrastructure as code. So I would definitely recommend everyone to check out this particular video. And don't worry at all, we'll be sharing a link to a HackMD file where you can find out all the resources, so you can access them anytime you want. So I definitely recommend you to check out this particular video as well.
Yeah, he explains it very well, and pretty much that's that chapter. Like, once you watch the video and a little bit of this documentation, that's pretty much all you need to know for the exam for that section. So this one is a lot easier, and then as we get into more of the CLI, the commands and how it works, then it starts to get a little bit harder as well. Yeah. So what I can do is, sure, I can share my screen. So let's have a look at some of the code. So
and feel free to ask your questions in the chat box anytime. Do not be afraid.
Yeah. So you can see my code, right?
Yeah.
Yep. So this is an Azure one, actually. So this is what I provision my AKS Kubernetes clusters with. So Azure Kubernetes Services. So you can see here that the Terraform files are called .tf. So this way, what I'm doing is I'm just breaking down. You can have as many Terraform files as you want. Terraform's smart enough to be able to, sort of, I guess, compile all the code and and create its dependency graphs on it. So the first thing that we actually want to do here is, sometimes we can split the provider and the Terraform out, but there's a concept of state. So what state does is that after you first provision your resources, so let's just say that you have like a Linux server. It doesn't matter what cloud, but once you provision that with Terraform needs to know what you've done in the past. Then it's like a ledger. It says that, okay, at this day we deployed this server into the cloud. So here's my record of doing that. So when you apply Terraform, it does a reconciliation of your code, the state, and what's in the cloud. So the CLI will go up to your state file. It will say, okay, tell me what you think is in the cloud. It will then go match it. And if anything's changed from what code you have then that's when Terraform will do it. It will either delete the server, or it will make it bigger, or stay the same if anything hasn't changed. So you can see here that I'm using an Azure backend. So that's an Azure storage account. So it's like an S3 account in AWS. But if I didn't want to have this in there, then I would just take that out, and then it would store my state file locally. So if it's stored locally, then that would mean that if it got deleted from my computer, then the state would be gone. So you wouldn't be able to recover it. So the best thing about having a remote backend is that if you're working in development teams, of one or more, well, even one person's good to have the remote backend as well for, encryption and safety, make sure that it's backed up, etc. But it's good for working with remote teams, because then you can share the same state file, and then you can track changes that way as well. So you can see here, there's a concept of provider. So there's a lot of standard providers out there and custom ones that you can even make your own provider. So this one is called Azure Resource Manager. There's another one called Google. There's another one, AWS, etc. So that will give you all of the, so see here, if we let's just look at a Kubernetes cluster. So this is actually, I'm actually using this a little bit more advanced. I'm using modules, not a resource, but you can see here that in Azure, this is my Azure Kubernetes cluster. And then if we go to the documentation as well, we can see that you will have every single parameter for that. So anything that is possible to provision in a Kubernetes cluster will be available. So these are my parameters that I'm using as well. So I can choose what resource group it goes to, what location or region. I can tell it what name that it gives, etc. as well. So you can see here I'm using variables. So variables are the concept of, here I'm declaring all the variables, because for each different client or environment, I want to be able to change this code dynamically, because I don't want to keep writing this code over and over again. So, like any good software engineering, you want to make reusable components. So here we can see that we're making variables, and then you can have things like validation as well. So this is pretty much saying if the client name is not greater than 3 or less, if it's less than 13, then it won't work, and then it will ask you, can you please give me an appropriate client name? And how you can see here in deployment, so these are where I specify what those variables actually are. So in the variables file, it's declaring it, it's saying, I have these variables, and then this one's saying, these are the values for those variables. So this one, for example, is a demo, but you could have, dev, UAT, test, prod, etc. So that's a really good way of keeping it dynamic and making reusable code that is very beneficial, because I've been at companies before where they had around 30 customers and they didn't use Terraform. So imagine every time there's different updates and different versions of things, it was crazy, because you have 30 different environments that took around 6 weeks to stand up, it's so hard to, to operate. You spend a lot of money on the management of those, and yeah, it's just really hard. So this is a good thing of automating. This is, if we think of DevOps, this infrastructure as code is sort of the first stage that you have. Then you have, like application configuration and more part of your CI process as well. So that's the concept of providers and variables. Do we have any questions so far on that at all? Yeah, it looks like it's all good. So
Yeah.
you can also have outputs. So outputs are similar to variables. So outputs the other way. So we have variables going in, and then if we want to use other scripts after Terraform is run, we have a concept of output. So what output means is that in the output, you can say this AKS server, give me its ID, give me its, like if you want like the kube config to connect to the cluster, then you could output that as well. So you can see here, I'm actually outputting, I'm just constructing a Azure CLI because I want to connect to the cluster afterwards. But any module or resource that you have in Terraform, you can specify outputs as well that you can use in your next step of the pipeline, or if you want to use it on your computer as well. So that's essential. And you can see here the .terraform. When you do Terraform in it, that will actually, it will look up your provider. It will look up all of the resources that you're using and pull them all down. So you can see here that, that will pull down providers, modules. So this is all of the Azure RM provider that we need. And you can have different versions and hard code them in the version as well. You can see here, because I'm not saying a version, it's just going to download the latest. And then modules as well. So these are all the modules that I have that I'm using. And then we can see here that these are, because I'm using, I don't want to talk about this too much, it's more advanced, but I'm referencing external modules that I have in another folder. The reason I do that is because I can share that with other projects I have as well. So yeah, you can see that this is what a resource looks like. So before I'm referencing modules, but this one is a resource. You can do this as well. You could actually put a resource in that code as well, and it would still work absolutely fine. So yeah, you can see that's the concept of modules as well. Kunal, you have any questions about this so far?
Yeah, I had a question actually. So
Sure.
you just mentioned about modules, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the difference between like a, Terraform config file that we actually write and a module that is actually present? So what's the difference between both?
Yeah, good question. So if we look here, so now you can do modules a lot of different ways as well. So you can have something called like a private registry or Terraform Cloud where you externally store your modules and you reference them. So you can reference them in Terraform Cloud or even in a folder in the same project and say, I want to call this module. And why you do that as well is because it's reusable. You don't have to do, big blocks of code. This one's not probably an example because it's just one, but if you think about, you want to hard code a few values for security reasons, or you only need to change the name each time, then it makes sense to use modules because you want less code. So let's choose an easy one. So here we can see resource group. So you can see here, this way I'm doing it, I'm storing my modules in GitHub. So I have another repo that stores all of my Terraform modules. And the reason I like this is because at my company at the moment, for example, we have quite a few development teams. So we have around 6 development teams. And why this is good storing them. So instead of having, like, let's say that we have a security concern in this and we need to change one value, instead of going into each single repo and then changing it, manually and committing it and deploying it, you can change it in your modules file. So you're only changing it in one place. And then next time that they run the pipeline, that will take the new changes, for example. So it's just a good way to really standardize on your code and make sure that you're not rewriting the same in copy. You don't want to start copy and pasting code all the time, because that's when you start being not efficient, and then it's just you're going to have lots of errors in the future if you do that. So that's the concept of modules and why I use them. So it's like in programming as well, where if you're redoing the same thing over and over again, you'll use a function. So you call that function that does that code, and then if you needed to change it, you would just change a function, not every single place that you reference that code.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
Yeah, so that's pretty much that one.
Yeah, and we have a question in the chat.
Sure. Yep. So some variables that are fine after creating components. My question is about that. How can we use? Okay, sorry, I'll put this on the screen. So some variables that are fine after creating components on the cloud. My question is about that. How can we use this kind of variables on our Terraform code? So, so some variables that are fine after creating deployments. Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. So let's go back to the code and have a look at it. So, sorry, I only have one screen tonight as well, so it looks funny sometimes when it shows the. Okay, so this is a perfect example resource group. So what Terraform does is let's say that you have to create 10 resources. Terraform's generally smart enough to understand that, okay, a resource group is the first thing that I should create, so it's going to do that first. And you can do the concept of depends on as well. So you can say that before I create, let's say, Kubernetes cluster, I need a resource group or I need a network. And after I create this resource group, what you can see here is that, see how we say resource group? So the question, is how can we use the variables into the next item or service? Is that we can say, okay, you've just made a resource group. So if we split screen here and show the resource group as well, we can see, okay, we've made this resource group. And then we say here that the Kubernetes cluster, part of the compulsory variables that it requires is it's a resource group name. So we can say, okay, give me the module.resourcegroup.name, and that's one of the outputs that we talked about before. So in that module that I have an output of name. And that's the cool thing that you can do is you can use variables from the service that you made and put them into your next one. So it's really powerful. So you can see here we're using also a network. So the subnet needs a VNet, so you pass the VNet into the subnet module, and then, so yeah, that's how you can add variables in from the last one. Yeah, I hope that explained the question. So yeah, it's very cool. You can, so also when Terraform knows, okay, this is passing in the resource group name, it's smart enough to know, okay, I need to go and make that resource group name first before I make this cluster. Or you could also have here, there's something called depends on, you can see there. Sorry. So see, depends on, that's an array, and then you could say like module dot whatever, and then that will say, okay, don't make this resource until that's done, because you might need a variable or something from that. So that's the answer to that question. And then,
we have another question in the chat.
Yeah, so when we change the function in module, does that make it change for all? Yes, it does. But you can also pin versions. So let me show you about that as well, because as much as it's good that it'll change it for all, it won't actually pick up the change until you do Terraform init and then apply. So it will pull down, it will pull down the code. It will say, okay, this module's changed. I'm now going to deploy it. If you say, yes, I agree to deploy that. But sometimes that can be bad because that could introduce a breaking change in production and it could actually break your code. So how you can actually get around that is that you can pin, and this is another reason I use Git as well. So if we look here, we can see, okay, so I'm actually not pinning it on this one. I should be, but you can do this. So ref, and then like you can either pin it to a specific branch in that repo, like main, or you can normally I tag it as well, so you could be like v.0.1, and then don't quote me exactly on that parameter, but it's something like that. I've got it in other modules that we can look at, but what you can do, so like if you don't want to introduce breaking changes and you're a little bit scared of doing that, then you can pin it. So the new release would be, something like 1.1 or 0.2, etc. And then it would only pick up the changes. It would only pick up the changes when you specify that new release. So generally, when we update our modules as the cloud team, we'll do release notes. So we have sprints of 2-week cycle, and then every 2 weeks we'll say, these are the tickets that we've done. We've updated all these modules. If you want to use these new modules, you point to this branch. Some of them we enforce you have to because security reasons. So for people that aren't as worried about it, like if it's like a proof of concept or something, you don't have to pin the branch or the tag, and you just put like that. And that will always pick up the latest changes off the default branch, would be main or master. So I hope that answered that question as well. So yeah, in summary, modules will be changed. If you change them, they will take effect once you reapply your code with the CLI, or you can pin them, or you can not use modules, and you can see what we used before with a resource. So there's no reason that you can't use a resource like that, and you wouldn't even use modules. You can just use your own code. But we in or any company that I work in, I recommend that they don't use that and they use modules, because then it gives governance and guardrails. So you want to ensure that developers can be as productive as they want and do anything in production, but you want to make sure that they're not going to break things or have security concerns as well at the same time. So generally we use modules, and modules consist of one or more resources. So let's say, for example, a network is subnet, and there's no reason that you can't put more than one resource in there to make the module easier for developers. So saying, I want a Lambda function, and then you can have everything else associated with it in there, so it's easy for the developer. They don't need to know all the cloud stuff. They can just say, I want to put my code here. This is the module, and it gives you the parameters. So that was, yeah.
Yeah, so another question actually I had related to modules. So like, should we be using like pre-built modules? That I think there are a lot of modules that already exist. HashiCorp, Terraform provides us a lot of modules pre-built. Should we be using that and modify those according to us, or should we be writing our own modules? What is the approach?
That's a very good question. Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Yeah, you can always leverage stuff that the community's made as well, because why wouldn't you? Because the thing that you have to be careful about as well is, like, you need to check what someone else has written that module. Like they could do like how do you know? How can you validate that? This is if it's like an external developer or someone. How can you validate that they're actually good? So generally, when I do Terraform, I do it like a very specific way. I call it like it's like our own framework that we built around it. So I personally always like to write my own modules, and generally they're pretty much copied and pasted from the documentation anyway. It's just saying like, I want the latest TLS. Just we run this thing called TFSec. It's a static code analysis that will tell us. It's very, very good. It will tell us if we have any vulnerabilities in there. So we write our own modules just because we know what we've read, we know exactly how it works and how it's in it. But yeah, there's no reason that you can't reference modules that have been done already as well. So yeah, I guess if we go to the HashiCorp documentation, you'll see that let's go look one up, for example. So I'll share my screen soon. So and it's really, really good documentation.
And for those in the chat, I can maybe quickly drop in the link for the documentation as well.
Yeah,
so
sure.
You all can check that out.
Yep. Okay, and we'll see that this one, for example, is what we had before, is a Kubernetes cluster. So you can see here that this, for example, could be a module if you really wanted. So you can see that it's making a resource group that it needs, and then pretty much this one's saying that the only dependency it has is a resource group. So you could tie both of those together as a module, and then the developer doesn't even need to know that it does need a resource group or know what it is. You just you could have variables like this, like tell me the name, and that's all I need to know, and then they will have a cluster spun up. So this is using the resources, but if you make that a module, so the module is just wrapping the resources and sort of making it your own. But yeah, you can see here that the documentation is really, really good. So this is why I like Terraform too. Like if you're starting off in DevOps, because it's so easy. Like you don't even really need to know too much about cloud. If someone requests, okay, give me a Kubernetes cluster, you say, okay, I'll copy and paste this. And with that little bit of code that we showed before, you just say, okay, copy and paste, and then you can provision it straight away. And you can see that for any single service in Azure. And you can see the details here. So you can specify things like, default on call, and it will tell you the ones that are optional and required. And then it's very powerful, because if you didn't know Terraform and you were manually provisioning stuff, you would have to have a lot of experience in, doing like a ClickOps style where you're clicking all of the services and you're making them. And Terraform makes it easier because it tells you exactly what it needs and what other service it needs, and then that you can just start constructing your code like that. So very, very good like that. So I hope that answers the question as well. So yeah, what other questions do you have, Kunal?
So yeah, I actually had a question related to, you mentioned about Terraform state, right? So basically state actually keeps a track of like what actually is happening in the Terraform config file, and what actually do we want, and what actually is running in the real world. So like if we are just starting out like from the initial stage, right? So what actually would the state basically compare with? We do not have anything that is previously running. So if we are just starting initially, so how would the state be a part of that particular process?
Yeah,
I hope I was able to.
No, that makes sense. So the first command that you run is Terraform init, which means Terraform initialize. So it's going to start up the state file. It's going to start giving it the structure it needs, but there'll simply be nothing in that state file. So because there's nothing in the state file, it says that we have nothing in the cloud, so therefore it doesn't need to go. Well, yeah, it doesn't need to go to the cloud, because as far as that's concerned, it doesn't have any resources. So the first time you do it, it will just it will make the Terraform state, and because if you don't have any resources in it, it simply won't do anything because it's not there.
Yeah.
And then every time you add it, it will add that to the state. When you run it, it will check the cloud and say, yes, I confirm that this code matches what I have in the cloud. If it doesn't match, then it will go update, delete, or add the service.
Yeah, sure. And you recently, you just shared your screen and showed us the code of like what exactly the Terraform config file looks like, right? So I actually read this somewhere that the code that we write in Terraform, it's actually follows a declarative approach, right?
Correct.
So
Yes. Yeah.
maybe you can, elaborate more on that particular point for the audience here.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, that's a good question as well. So being declarative, it makes it sort of human readable. So there's a lot of other infrastructure as code, like if you look at ARM templates, that's made in JSON, and that's very hard to read. So the good thing is about Terraform is it's declarative. You have it under source control. You can read it. You can change it. Being declarative instead of imperative. So if you're using AWS CLI or something to create the resources, you don't really have a record or it versioned anywhere. You've just made it. So being declarative is really powerful because you can, when you're storing it in Git, you can see exactly what you've done. You can audit it. It's good for compliance. If something goes wrong, you can track that down to the commit shell to see where they've done that wrong. So um, so much advantages being declarative. That's one of the really good things I like about it as well. And the HCL language as well is very easy to read as well. So it really is quite an easy. It's quite scary at the start, but once you start doing a few times yourself, you can see that it really is quite easy. It's copy and paste. And changing it. I recommend if you do want to try it out that there's so much free cloud offerings. So if you type free GCP, free AWS, they all have their own free tiers, so you can use them for free.
Yeah, most definitely. And
Yeah,
adding on to the declarative point as well. So, basically what that, means is adding on to your point, we actually in a declarative approach, we actually do not, specify like how we want to do that particular thing. So for example, if you want your infrastructure to like, run two servers basically, so we don't like, specify each step, like from step one what should be done, step two what should be done, and step three like how should a server be started. We just, instruct Terraform, okay, we just want two servers. I don't know how you do it, but I just want the end result to be two servers starting out. So that is basically what an declarative approach exactly mean. And by there is actually another approach which is called as imperative, in which, we have to define each step, how should this be started and how, we want the two servers to be started. So you can definitely see like the declarative approach is much easier to be followed, and Terraform actually, follows this approach, and this makes things really easier for any organization out there. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
awesome.
So I think it's time to announce the winners of the certification vouchers. So I'll just share my screen again.
Yeah, drum roll.
And so here's the two winners there. Would you like to announce the winners?
Yeah, so the first winner of the Terraform Associate certification is Vrukshali Doravin. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correct. And the second
Yeah,
is Hamin Gulami. I think he's in the chat as well. So thank you for joining
yeah,
and congratulations.
yeah. So yeah, thanks for all your hard work so far as well. Like it's really cool to see both of yous putting the work in to get the certification as well. And a big thanks to HashiCorp community as well for helping us with these vouchers as well. So yeah, congratulations on those. I will send you the vouchers straight after this, or an hour after this. So yeah, congrats guys, and thanks. Yeah. So I think that's a great start for the first series. So maybe we can sort of keep it there. Keep studying everyone and look out for the next session, next one as well. If you want, also we have the mentoring repo here as well for people to see. So it has all of the Terraform program in here. So it has guides to study. It has the sessions that we have each Saturday as well. So check that out, and then we look forward to seeing you at the next one as well. So yeah, and a big thanks, Manel, for offering to the first one, and yeah, and we'll see you around now. Thank you very much for coming, everyone, and we'll
Awesome.
talk to you soon.
Thank you for
Cheers.
joining, everyone. See you the next one.
Thank you.
Bye.